Hi, everyone. It is great to be with you this morning, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how we can help cultivate a mathematical identity for our children. Thank you, Sydney, for starting us off. And that raffle, by the way, if you think about it mathematically, you have a good chance of winning because there's not too many people in here. So there you go. Stick around so that you can potentially win. So we're going to spend some time talking about mathematical identity. And the beginning of this session, we're going to think about what mathematical identity is, why it's important, and then we'll spend the latter part exploring resources and strategies to strengthen your child's mathematical identity. So just to reiterate, I'm Jess Tilley. I'm one of the directors of math for the school district. And again, I'm really happy to be with you today. Welcome. So we're going to start with thinking about mathematical identity and why it matters. And in the chat, we are going to drop a very, very short little quiz. There's 2 questions. It's not really a quiz. And this is really an opportunity just to reflect on your own beliefs. So if you go into the chat and you click the link that I just put in there, you're going to see, and I'll actually show you. Once you click there, you're going to see this is called this mindset kit, which is really awesome. It's actually a great resource, not just for parents, but for teachers and for mentors. But I'd like you to just take a moment to answer these 2 questions. So the first question, and just how much do you agree with it? You can learn new things, but you can't really change your basic intelligence. And then your intelligence is something about you that you can't change very much. So if you can give me a thumbs up, whether it's like on camera or with an emoji that you were able to access the site, and make sure everybody's cool in the chat. Just click that link. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. All right, nice. Sydney's got it. And I want to give you a moment just to read the results. So when you're ready, can someone either, thank you, Crystal, could someone either come off mute or in the chat, what was something that sort of stuck with you when you read the results? Something that kind of resonated with you, made you think? And that could be your own results or something about the explanation. And we're a small group, so please feel free to come off mute if you'd like. Did it feel right? Did it feel accurate? If it said you had a really growth mindset or a fixed mindset or somewhere in the middle, how did that feel? Sydney, what about you? I'm just going to volunteer you.
They're fine. I honestly never really thought about the first question because I'm like, if you're learning new things, then you're like changing your intelligence. So I disagreed with the first one. And I disagreed with both of them because I feel like no matter what you learn or in what capacity, like you're still learning and you're still changing your mindset. And it's not, your mindset will never go back to what it used to be. So I disagreed with both of them.
And so your results were growth mindset?
Growth mindset, yep.
Okay. And Erica in the chat said it's accurate. Erica, do you want to elaborate on that? What about it was accurate? And you don't have to come off mute. That's okay.
Okay. No, I was trying to. I mean, it didn't want to work. I also got a growth mindset. The first question was, I was kind of like, okay, because I do believe that we were born with, in Spanish it's called a don, you know. It's something that you just naturally born with, a talent, with a skill. So no matter what you do, you're just so good at that specific thing, or some people have multiple, you know. So I was kind of like, I don't know, but you do change, like, whether it's for good or bad, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I like that you drew on your sort of experience of the dome. I actually haven't heard that before, so now I'm really intrigued. I'm gonna have to learn more. All
Yeah,
right.
it's like some people, like hairstylists, for example. Yeah, anybody could grab a blow dryer and blow dry your hair, but some people have that talent where it's like they don't need a lot of effort and they just make your hair look so beautiful and it keeps growing. Some people destroy your hair, and even though they're doing the same thing as the next one, it's just something they were born with. Like my brother, for example, he's a mechanic. Since we were little kids, since he was a baby, we knew that's what he was good at. And yep, and that's what he does, and he's super, super good at it.
That's really interesting. So some people might have some like innate abilities or skills or interests maybe, right? And maybe with the hair, like I'm looking at my own, I'm not necessarily the best at making it like so beautiful, but I can learn how to, if someone teaches me to do it a little bit better, I think I do have the ability to learn. Cecilia, yes.
So when I answered, my thing came up in the middle.
Hmm.
Um, the first question, I think I said I disagree. Because whatever you have, as the young lady said earlier, I think you have basic intelligence for certain things. Years ago, when I went to one of these things to do a basket, because I was going to do a side hustle and sell baskets. I'm in the same class with the same people, and when I did the cellophane, mine looked horrible. But when other people did the cellophane, it looked like they could charge $50 at that time to sell, a basket. And then the same thing with when she was talking about the hair. I know the basics of some styles, but I can't do like um, one of my family members who she can look at your face and say, nope, that's not the style you want, and give you a style that'll make you go, oh. So um, that's just my opinion. And then the second part is you can't change very much. If you ask me this as a 25-year-old, I would say I probably would disagree, but as somebody almost 60, I think I'm kind of sort of stuck in my ways, although I'm always open to learn. Um, I'm feeling like my older family members who were just, they weren't rigid, but as they got older, they just kind of got, okay, this is the way I've been doing it. Um, for me, it's not that I don't want to change. It's just I have so many things going on in my life
Hmm.
that change is an effort. And sometimes I might not want to take the effort. It's not that I'm being stubborn or anything. I'm like, oh, I got other stuff that I want to do that needs my attention. So to make that effort to change, if it's not, I'll end with this, if it's not impacting me physically or emotionally or financially, I'll probably just go, probably not a good thing, but I feel myself as we're looking at these questions and as I'm listening to people share their experience, I feel like I'm my older family members.
I think you bring up some really important points. The idea of age and how you know, sometimes, like to your point, it takes effort. And if you don't want to put in that effort, or if it doesn't feel like it's important, or you're really set in certain ways, then you might not be inclined to learn this new thing. But can you? That's the thing that we're going to be thinking a lot about today, about our beliefs. And I'll just tell you this one quick thing before we move on. My 75-year-old mother has decided that she would really like to learn how to use AI. And which is, you know, again, it's like, to your point, sometimes if you feel like we're all inundated with all the things, and if you don't feel like this thing is important, or you just, you know, you don't have that motivation, then you're not gonna probably try to tackle that, you know, drastically new learning. But it's really a good point. And our children are, you know, young, and their brains are even more plastic than our adult brains, right? So I just love that you brought that up. And I think we're all starting to think about intelligence. So I'm showing this to you because this is a math, you know, we're thinking about math, right? But we're going to be thinking about even ideas that are bigger than math. I want to name that for all of us, because a growth mindset and the beliefs we hold about who we are and what we're capable of, and in particular our children, is not just math, right? This is like life skills. But I'm showing you these pictures because if you if you search in Google math person, these are some of the top images that you would see. And so I'm going to ask you to think about, what do you notice about these images? And what cultural assumptions do you feel are reflected in these images? And by the way, I am not saying that these are images of math people. I'm saying this is what happens when I Googled math person. So what do you notice? And you can feel free to come off mute or put something in the chat.
The way they're all dressed, like intellectual.
Yeah. So they kind of present in like this intellectual way. And I put air quotes, by the way, around intellectual.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because that don't mean nothing.
Right, right.
Like, yep. That do not mean you smart.
That's right. Any other notices?
I noticed that there's mostly small young children and people from other, I'm assuming other countries and other cultures. I don't notice Black culture. So yeah, I just noticed that.
And that's a big noticing.
Mhm.
What else do you notice?
And like to elaborate on it, I just noticed that, you know, with cultural stigmas and norms that per some statistics and data, certain cultures or groups of people are presumed to be the more elite or more established in certain mathematics and things like that. So I just kind of, that's the take I got from it per a Google search.
That's right. Yeah, and someone put in the chat, all male, right? We see some Asian students. Like you said, we don't see Black students. And so I asked you to look at this because when this is the way that we think about a math person, what does that do to our children? And how does that belief in what a math person looks like impact the way our own children in Philadelphia might believe that they, you know, whether they identify with being capable or being this image of a math person? So I show you this because these beliefs are detrimental. If our children think that this is what a math person looks like, and that that it doesn't look like them, then those messages that they receive can impact the way that they engage with mathematics, can impact the way they achieve in mathematics. And it was funny, I was showing this slide deck to a colleague of mine just to kind of go through. I like to get second opinions and thought partnership. And she's like, why isn't Katherine Johnson on there? And I was like, because this is what happens when you Google math person. And if you Googled a math person, you should see Katherine Johnson. You should see there's many different representatives of different cultural backgrounds who are brilliant math people. But unfortunately, we have a very strong stereotype in this country that a math person looks like the images that you see on the screen. And so part of what we need to be thinking about is how do we dismantle these beliefs and these images of what a math person is? And how do we lift up the idea that all of us are math people, that every single child is capable of brilliance in mathematics, that there is no, there shouldn't be a stereotype of a math person. How do we change that narrative for our children? So, are you a math person? I'm sharing this because I think it's really interesting that there's only in the whole world about 200,000 people who have advanced math degrees. So that's only 0.003% of the population. But is that a math person? Is that what a math person is? They have to have an advanced degree in mathematics to be a math person. So we really want to think about, what does it actually mean to be a math person? So I told you we were going to think about math identity. What is it, and understand it, and why it matters. And so these beliefs come from this really wonderful book about mathematical literacy and the idea of developing identities of inclusion. And so, Crystal, you said it really well. The images that we were looking at, they don't look like you, right? They don't look like me. And so how do we create this idea that math is inclusive, that math doesn't belong to one type of person, but belongs to everybody? And so there are these three beliefs that we need our children to hold in order to have a strong math identity. The first is a belief about their own capability as a math learner. So believing that they can be good at math, believing that math is accessible for them. There's also beliefs about how they're perceived by others as a math learner. So how does their teacher see them? How do their families see them? How do their peers see them? Do they think that they are capable of great things in mathematics? And the last is the belief about math and the nature of math abilities. So what is math? Is math just being quick at calculations? Or is math so much bigger than that? Is math, are our abilities in math predicted for us? We're born with it or we're not? We have a math brain or we don't? And we know that, and I'll say this to you, that there is no such thing as a math brain. Every single child is capable of mathematical brilliance. There just isn't. And it's been disproven by research, by brain imaging. And in fact, I'll just tell you this quick thing that I thought was so interesting. There's a professor and researcher out of Stanford. Her name is Jo Boaler, and she basically found that when you she did brain imaging of neurotypical students and students with disabilities. And while they were solving math problems, what she noticed was that one part of the brain in the neurotypical kids that lit up did not light up in the kids with disabilities. So this is again, we're looking at the brain. She then spent about 6 weeks, it's not even that much time, 6 weeks with the students who had learning disabilities, teaching math in a very open and accessible way where they got to look at images, make sense of things, notice, wonder, where their beliefs were, where she worked really hard on building up their confidence and their math esteem, I'll call it. And after 6 weeks, I think it was about 6 weeks, they went back and did brain imaging, and the parts of the brain that were lighting up with the neurotypical kids started lighting up in the kids with disabilities. So we have to understand that our brains are plastic. And even though plastic sounds like it's not changeable, it's kind of a weird word to use about brains, but it means that our brains can grow. They continue to grow throughout our lifetime. They're not stagnant. The more we try to learn things, the more, neurons are created. And it's just something that we all have to collectively support our children to believe that they are capable and that math is for them. I want to ask you, and in the chat, if you can, what is a word or a phrase that describes the way you felt when you were learning math? what is a word or a phrase that describes the way you felt? Overwhelmed, unsure, shy, frustrated, smart, confused. And I wonder what would happen if we asked our children this question, like, what is a word or a phrase that describes how you feel in math? I ask you this question because before we can support our children in developing a growth mindset and in developing the beliefs that they're capable, we have to interrogate our own beliefs. We have to think about ourselves. We have to reflect on ourselves. So the resource that I asked you to, that very first activity where you figured out your growth or fixed mindset, there are really good resources in that site. And I know that Sydney will make sure that every resource that's shared in this space today will get shared with you in a follow-up email. But there are really great activities to help support a growth mindset. So when we think about these, and of course, we have a new math program, Illustrative Mathematics, we're almost through year 1. And what's really amazing about this program is that it understands the research around beliefs. There's a ton of research, and I'm going to share like a couple of videos with you. So you're going to see some stuff today that hopefully will convince you that beliefs make a big difference in how students achieve. But what I'm showing you right here are 2 of the foundational principles of IM. So the first one, I'll just read it to you. All students, each with unique knowledge and needs, enter the mathematics learning community as capable learners of meaningful mathematics. Sydney, could you read the second one? I've been hearing my voice a lot.
Students learn math by doing math. By engaging with their peers, students have the opportunity to see themselves as mathematical thinkers with worthwhile ideas and perspectives.
Thank you. So these 2 principles, my question to you is, how do you think they relate to math identity? If I'm in a classroom, I'm a student, and my teacher believes that I have unique knowledge and needs, and that I'm capable of learning meaningful math, and that I'm learning math by doing it, by engaging with my peers, by having opportunities to see myself as a math thinker with worthwhile ideas, how might that be supportive of a math identity?
The first one kind of reminds me of a teacher giving you the instruction and you're just doing it by yourself and on your own. But the second one reminds you of how the teacher puts you in small groups, and the weaker ones are with the stronger ones, and they help each other solve the math equations.
And it's interesting that the first one makes you feel like they're doing it on their own. What I'll tell you is that in some parts of the curriculum, like for example, every single day there's a warm-up. And in the warm-up, it's whole class. Everybody is looking at the same, question. But there's usually not a wrong answer. There's basically a collection of ideas. And we're going to do one today in a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's really about knowing that everybody has the potential to contribute something, that they can contribute some idea to this community. And when we contribute, it helps us feel confidence. It helps us feel like an active member, that we're included, right? I mean, I know even as an adult, when we're doing something and we feel like we can't contribute, that's not a great feeling, right? So we're positioning kids to be contributors in the math classroom. I see in the chat, it shows no matter what my background or my skill level might be, I am just as smart and capable as my peers. Absolutely. So even students who have struggled in the past, who might, have certain challenges with math, they can contribute, and their ideas are honored. I also see in the chat to me, there's 2 types of math, life math and the book math we learned at school. Yeah, and you know what? We're trying to merge the 2, right? That we want to make sure that what happens in school is also the life math, and that our families and all the different opportunities children have outside of school really elevates and lifts up the math that we all live with and deal with.
No, because I'm sorry, but I love math. I'm a math freak, right?
Yay.
I always love math. But I see my peers and my classmates in schools, they used to struggle with math, and I'm like, you guys don't know, but you guys do math every day because that's why I said I think there's two type of math, but I think everybody has some basic math skills. We use it every day in the kitchen, everywhere. Just don't know that it's math, but it is math, you know?
That's right.
Now, there's people like me that we just like it. That don't mean that I'm smarter than you or nothing like that, because what I said earlier, everybody has their thing.
Mhm.
I'm not that good in reading. I've tried to read a whole of, and I feel embarrassed to say that because I'm 30 years old, but reading is just not for me. And I'm trying. I am trying. And I see my kids are the same way. They love math, but they have a little struggle with reading, and we working on it. But that don't mean
Listen,
I'm smarter, or that don't mean
that's
you're
right.
smarter. It's just everybody, but everybody does some type of math during our daily activities.
Absolutely. Every day, we're all doing math. We just have to think about what does that really mean, right? And if we think it's just about like calculating stuff, that's not, that's one very small piece of math, really. It's not the hallmark of math. And also, if we think it's about speed, the greatest mathematicians in the world take a ton of time to figure out math, to problem solve. So we can't just, we have to open up our definition of what math is. So I love what you said. And by the way, Audible is great if you ever want to just listen to a book. But I understand that, again, it doesn't mean we have our skills, our strengths. It doesn't mean that that someone is smarter than the other. So I just want to say one more time that I love this. I love that our new math program is built on these two ideas, because we need to make sure that our children are positioned to see themselves in the math classroom, because that ultimately leads to more confidence, which leads to trying new problems, being okay with a little bit of struggle, and ultimately achievement. So, how to be a math person. Step 1, do math, any type. And step 2, be a person. So I wanted to share this with you because there's these key components of math identity that are distinct, but they're all related. And we're going to spend time thinking about these 4 things. So math identity is related to these 4 areas. First, the sense of belonging. Do you feel like you belong in math? B, do you have a growth mindset? Do you feel like you are capable of growing your brain, of learning more, of, getting new skills? C, the perceived utility. This is about the way you believe math is, like, what's its use? Do you feel like it's useful? Do you feel like do you understand what it means, what it is? And then the last one is the anxiety, math anxiety. And we know that that is a real problem that, and just so you know, something upwards of over 90% of adults have some level of math anxiety. I'm not saying it's extreme, but we have some level. And that's alarming. We do not want our children, we don't want to perpetuate that. We don't want to continue this generational idea that, it's this anxiety continues, right? So which one of these, if you put a letter in the chat, which one of these do you feel like is a strength of yours and of your child, or of a child you know? Which one of these is a strength? So if you want to put, like, I think yourself is B, and then comma, your child is D. And by D, like, they don't have math anxiety, because that wouldn't be a strength if they had it, right? I see B, so an area of strength is a growth mindset. B for nice, and C for your child. That's great to have the good perceived utility. Nice. All right. So I'm going to show you a quick clip. And this is from a TED Talk, Why Everyone is a Math Person. The whole TED Talk is awesome. I'll make sure it's shared with you, but we're just going to watch a quick clip. So I love what she just kind of brings home is this idea that belief really impacts achievement. Was there anything about that video that kind of surprised you? And again, feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute. I'm really good with wait time. It's a teacher skill. I see the stereotyping shift. Can you tell me more what you mean?
Just in the beginning when she was saying that when certain groups of Asian American women were tested, like when they were reminded of their race, they did well, but when they were reminded of their gender, they like did poorly. And it just makes me think about like I don't like how people perceive women when it comes to math and like how we're not always seen as like very math forward. And it's something that I have never really thought about up until now. So yeah, I don't know. It was just really interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to add on?
Grandmother never went to school. She knew her math. She knew her math. Nobody could, play her about her money, about nothing. And she never stepped a foot in school. Math is everywhere. And if anything, like I said, it will be us, because just by giving birth, that's math right there.
Oh, you're giving me like traumatic memories right now, Erica. I will say that, I think like to your point, math is everywhere. It belongs to everyone, whether you were formally educated or not. And until we dispel this myth of who a math person is, we're going to continue to have children who don't believe that they are, right? And I find it just interesting. A lot of this stuff has these historical contexts, right? We know that. Like this was a very intentional plan to position white men as the math people, right? And if you noticed, one thing she was saying was that like people who were asocial, which is like introverted, like not super social people, ended up being sort of positioned as the ideal, computer engineer or again, like this math person. So it's up to us to continue to start to change this narrative. Not just educators, but we're all educators in this room, right? If you're working with a child, if you're involved in any way, shape, or form with education, you are an educator. And so we need the more people who can start to change these ideas and say things differently, the better. I know it's going to start again.
Some clever studies.
I don't know why YouTube does that. So, oops, I wanted to share with you, there are these 8 mathematical practices, and this is something that came through from the Common Core, and they're right now written in I can statements just to kind of give you an idea of what they are and what we want students to believe they can do. So these 8 mathematical practices are throughout IM, which again is our new math program. And they're also, any math program at this point that is being developed would include these 8 mathematical practices because it's been determined that they're critical for a child to develop mathematically. So I'm curious if, as you scan these, how do you feel like they are reflecting those components we talked about: belonging, growth mindset, perceived utility, and math anxiety? So take a moment just to scan them and feel free to drop in the chat or come off mute again. How do they reflect those components?
With number 7, I can use what I know to solve new problems. I noticed in the curriculum that my granddaughter is using, and she goes to a charter school, they want you to break everything down before you add or subtract. So if it's in the hundreds column, break it down so it rounds off to the nearest hundred. Break out the 10 so it rounds to the nearest 10, and then the nearest one. And then you subtract everything, and then you add everything back up just to get your number. And I noticed that some people have a way of using what they know to solve the new problems, and some people have to learn the way that they're being taught now. For instance, my son says, "Mom, why did you got to break all this down just to subtract a number? Why aren't they teaching her borrow and carry over?" And I said, "This is a new form for them. Just all they're doing is making it more confusing for them, because," he says, "math just isn't about numbers." He says, "Don't they realize that?" And I said, "Well," I said, "math changes." I said, "But she's using what she knows and getting the answer." And the teacher said, as long as she gets the answer, whether she does it the way the book tells her or she's learning it in a way that she can adapt to it, she's learning her math. And that's the way she perceives it. So number 7 is a good one for me.
Yeah, and think about in life, we're constantly having to solve new problems, and typically we're drawing on either what we know already or we're trying to figure it out, right? It's figure outable. We're Googling or we're just trying to make sense of what we're encountering. So that's a really good point. And I'll just tell you that the reason she probably wasn't learning like the carrying and the borrowing is because typically, we didn't learn that with understanding. We learned it as like a set of steps to follow. And so it's one of those things that we've found can deteriorate over time if there's no understanding. So I love that you're approaching it though. And I love that the teacher has said it's not about, she can do it in the way that makes sense to her, as long as she gets it the same answer. I think that's really amazing. Yeah, Sydney.
I really resonated with number 1, just because I remember when I was younger, that shift for me with math, and it was in 7th grade. And like my teacher, she was just, I went to Catholic school at that time, so they were like very like to the point, very direct and everything like that. But it didn't, I guess I didn't really feel comfortable with math, so I would just give up very easily, or I would go to my sister who was like better at math, and I would be like, "Can you just help me? Because it's just not clicking for me." But then you have when I got to my sophomore year in high school, I had another teacher, and she was very patient with me, and she would always like, say, "If you want to come in early, because I know you get here early, if you want to come in and just sit and we can try to work through some things," or she would let me stay late to work through. Like, I feel like holding those spaces for students to be able to really try to work through things without shutting them down and saying, like, "This is not how you do it. This is how you're supposed to do it." I think holding that space for kids can really help frame how they see math. And even like me, like, going to these family math series workshops, like I think that has also shifted my perception of math. And even though like I still don't consider myself the best at math, it changes my perception. It shows me that I can do it if I just, put that effort in, and I can shift my mindset. So
I love that, Sydney. I love that. And I think like your point about creating space for children, if these 8 practices, which are embedded in our math programming in the Philadelphia School District now, because we're using illustrative mathematics, if our children are using these mathematical practices and feel that they can do these different things, then it's that space creates the opportunity for them to develop strong math identities. And so I just love that you shared that. And I love that we're seeing your math identity sort of change throughout this series. So that's exciting. That you just made my whole week. So thank you for that. Oops, I don't know where that went. Okay, that's underneath that. I'm showing you this really quick video. It's from the same growth mindset link that we initially took that quick assessment. I love this. It's only a 3-minute video, but it talks really specifically about how parents can support their children with a growth mindset.
When parents spend time thinking about their own mindset, most can recognize aspects of both growth mindset and fixed mindset in their own thinking. Sometimes we might have a fixed mindset about some abilities, like math or art, but a growth mindset about others. If we want our children to develop a growth mindset, we need to be mindful of our own thinking and of the messages we send with our words and with our actions. Here are some examples of fixed mindset statements and corresponding growth mindset statements. Think about what messages they send and what messages you want to send with your own words.
Our intuition is often to praise kids for being smart, but this kind of praise sends the wrong message. If our kids are praised for being smart when they understand something quickly, then what will they think when they encounter something hard? Being praised for intelligence can make kids think, if my past success made me smart, my current struggle makes me dumb. Instead of praising your kids for being smart when they understand something quickly, praise them when they work hard to accomplish something difficult. This tells them that you value hard work and that hard work is what leads to success. Kids learn how to behave by imitating others. One of the most powerful ways that parents can model the growth mindset is by being willing to fail and eager to learn from setbacks. When parents talk positively about the mistakes they make or the mistakes their kids make, their kids start to think of mistakes as a natural part of the learning process. That's critical for having confidence to take risks and invest themselves in challenging work. It's also critical for having the self-assurance to calmly reflect on one's own mistakes, instead of just trying to sweep them under the rug or blame someone else.
At first, it can be difficult to develop a growth mindset, but it's worth it because research shows that parents can have a powerful impact on their kids' mindsets. Remember that developing a growth mindset in your kids and in yourself is a process. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't come easily right away. You will improve by practicing and by learning from your mistakes. In other words, have a growth mindset about developing a growth mindset.
Love that. Have a growth mindset about developing a growth mindset. So really, I think the idea is that, the way we reflect on ourselves, the words that we use to talk about our children, they're watching, right? How we value mistakes. Mistakes are so important. They're in fact, we learn more when we make a mistake. So really trying to help them see that failure and mistake making is not a bad thing, that it's a part of the learning process. So I want to, because we're shorter on time, because I wanted to create space. I mean, we had such great conversation today. I am going to make sure that this resource is given to you. Like I said, this website is awesome. They have some really great little mini lessons and activities for you to check out. But I want to share with you before we end, well, this quote first, and then I want to show you a notice and wonder from our curriculum. So our words and actions provide powerful messages about who is and who isn't good at math. We talked about that a lot today, and our children will live up or down to these messages. So I encourage you all to continue to try to change the narrative about who is a math person and what math is for. So I'm just going to show you an example of a strategy of something in IM, something that your children would encounter if they're in a classroom in the school district and any school that's adopting a program like this. So I'm going to just click on this. It's going to take me to the ILC classroom. So I'm going to just ask you, watch this video, and while you're watching, what do you notice and what do you wonder? So what do you notice and what do you wonder? Feel free to come off mute, throw it in the chat. There's no wrong answer. What did you notice? And what are you wondering?
I'm wondering why he's putting all the numbers in sequence order on the file cabinet in the back of it.
Yeah, I wonder that too. It's in order. And by the way, if I was teaching in a classroom, I'd be writing down your idea. So that was a great idea. I'd write it down. It's a little
There's
hard to do it this way. Yeah, go ahead, Sydney.
there's 4 sets of 12.
Oh, so far there's 4 sets of 12. Something you notice? Anyone else? What do you notice? What do you wonder? In a classroom of, you know, however many 6th graders, this is directly from 6th grade lesson, there would be like a lot of ideas, right? They might notice I mean, somebody might say, I noticed a lot of Post-it notes. Someone might say, I noticed numbers on Post-it notes. Someone might say what Sydney said, or what, is it Bonilla? I don't want to, then I see the re-roll, okay. Bonilla said, you know, why are they in sequential order? And we would, as a teacher, you would collect the ideas, the notices and the wonders. And maybe the ultimate question that you have is really that you want them to get to, would someone say, how many sticky notes would it take to cover the cabinet? Okay, so that might be a question that a child says. And the idea is we don't say anything a kid can say. So I'm sharing this with you because we're talking about beliefs. We're talking about developing identity. If your math classroom started like that, where you had to watch a video like the one you just saw, and all you were asked to do was notice and wonder, how might that help your identity? It's accessible. It's assuming that kids have knowledge, have ideas that are worth sharing, that are worth collecting, and it's really a focus on strengths. This lesson ultimately talks about surface area. And think about how this is like kind of pitching that ball on surface area. We're talking about covering a surface, right? And they would do more. They wouldn't just stop there with this particular activity. They would keep going. They'd estimate how many they think, and then they would think about what would they need to know in order to figure it out. And so not only is it very engaging, but it's really honoring the people in the room. So I wanted to share that with you because a notice and wonder, by the way, is just something you can do whenever you're walking down the street. You can ask your children, what do you notice? What do you wonder? If you're in the kitchen and you're about to make something, like, what do you notice? What do you wonder? That is just a great strategy. And I actually I have a shirt that says Notice and Wonder Woman. And sometimes I wear it when I go visit schools and say, like, what do you notice? What do you wonder? It's just an awesome strategy to help them, and there's no wrong ideas. There's nothing wrong. Like, they might notice something that is so off base that like really doesn't help the class move forward, but it's okay. We honor it. Maybe they say like, it's yellow and you're like, oh, tell me more. Where do you see the yellow, right? Or you say, yeah, it is yellow, right? So it's a real honoring of children's ideas, and it really helps them with their math identity. I'm gonna make sure that you get this document, but those 8 mathematical practices, there are questions that you can ask as family members, or as people that work with children to help to help children develop these 8 mathematical practices. And there's a document that kind of provides these questions. But really, like, if a kid is struggling, can you draw a picture? What are you trying to figure out? Can you explain? And it's really this idea that we don't need to give them the answers. We want to ask them the questions, right? We want to help foster these ideas by asking the right questions. Yes, Cecilia, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the questions, and let's say I was not great in math.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know what abstractly and quantitative, am I saying it right, quantitatively mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what a viable argument means.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something where if I want to be an involved family member that explains those those math related jargon, if you will, because then
Yeah.
otherwise I get frustrated and now we both fail in math.
Absolutely. You're so right. It's a lot of jargon. So the document that we're going to make sure everybody gets, it gives a nice explanation in terms of what does it look like? So this middle column, and this document could be a lot, but it's something I wanted to give as a resource to better understand these mathematical practices. But like in order to reason abstractly and quantitatively, it means that you can use numbers and words to make sense of problems. You can think about what each number represents. You can think about the relationship. So this middle column in this document really explains what it looks like to be able to do these practice standards. Thank you for asking that, because I don't want this to ever feel, I mean, it can feel really overwhelming to look at these, but hopefully this resource will help families to really make sense of what each one of those means. And we don't need to work on all of them all the time at once, right? Pick one, right? Maybe pick one question that you just want to focus on. Like maybe you just want to ask your child, how could you prove that, right? Maybe that's the question you want to stick with and use a whole bunch, and then maybe you move on to another question. So I'm a big fan of chunking these things. I know it is 11 o'clock. I'm mindful of time. So I'm going to stop there to make sure everybody gets their survey, attendance, whatever you need to drop, Sydney. I just want to thank you all so much for being here. This has been an amazing morning with you all. And please, please reach out to me if you need anything. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Would love to connect again. And if you have any friends who weren't here, tell them there's a 5 o'clock session, same one. Would love to see more family members come. And again, I appreciate you. So over to Sydney.